I even took my law students over to Athletes Village on the U of M campus where their cafeteria where they eat and do all their stuff. If you have questions about NIL, come see us. Right. And so we are.
What kind of looks were you getting?
Some folks are like, this is kind of weird. Like, we're just trying to have a meal. And
Go for it. So you bring the business plan to the top-notch guy, highest guy you can go to.
Right.
He looks at you and he's like, go for it.
Yeah.
What were you doing when he said that? Were you just like, woosah? Or were you like, what was your emotion? You had to have emotion.
Yeah. Well, excitement, first of all,
yeah.
To have the support. But, it wasn't like a sense of relief because I felt confident, that he and the firm would be supportive. Like I mentioned, the firm is entrepreneurial and the firm is inclined to say yes as long as it's well thought out, right? Like, I'm not approaching you with any BS. Like, this is what I want to do. And what I think he understood is that if this is a space that you are passionate about, you are likely to do really good work.
Right.
Right? Because if you're doing something you're not passionate about, you might do a good job because it's your job.
Right.
But if it's doing something that you actually enjoy, are interested and passionate about, you're going to do well in that space. Right. Yeah. And so he was like, yeah, like green light. How can the firm support you? And I was like, I want to go to like this annual sports lawyers conference. It's like in a couple of months. And he was like, yep, marketing will help you figure that out. Like, well, let's go. Like, you start doing your thing. And that was like, the rest was history in terms of like getting the green light,
right.
And the support from the firm. And then for me, it was like, all right, my next step was I don't have a single client. So it's like, how do I market that I'm a sports lawyer or a sports and entertainment attorney with no clients?
Right.
Right. And so I'm scratching my head trying to figure this out. And, I'm talking to my colleagues about it. And they're like, oh, you should go talk to Luis. And I was like, all right. They're like, Luis represents a bunch of MLB players, Spanish-speaking MLB players. And I was like, oh, go grab coffee, chop it up with Luis. And he was like, you should go talk to our tax group. And I was like, okay. He was like, they've represented some NHL players. And then I was like, go talk to Trust and Estates. They've done some estate planning for high-profile NBA guys. And I was like, I thought I had this novel idea of doing sports entertainment. We already have the practice here. It's just not, like the Trust and Estates person, they just say that they do Trust and Estates work for like high net wealth individual.
Right.
They don't say that it's an NBA player.
Right.
Right. And so for me, all of my colleagues made my job easier. Now it's just I need to round up all of our representative experience, the things that we have done. And, I started working with our marketing department and I was like, this is all the stuff we've done in the sports and entertainment industry.
Right.
Okay, well, we already have this group. Now it's easy for me to go out into the marketplace and say, we have a sports entertainment practice group. These are the things that we have done. And I can talk about it from a we perspective because I'm a part of the firm.
Right.
Right. And so even if I don't have a single client myself, we've done this work. And that's how it really evolved. I started meeting people and explaining the different services that we offer in this industry. And people were willing to work with me, and start working with one client and the next client and the next client. And that's really how it unfolded. So that's how I got into the sports and entertainment space. And then obviously, naturally, as a sports and entertainment lawyer, July 2021, NIL becomes a thing for the very first time in NCAA's history.
Your phones are getting blown up at this point, I'm assuming.
It's, it was crazy because I think people were like, oh, like this is a huge paradigm shift, but nobody really understood what it meant. Right. And nobody did, and here I felt like for the first time as a sports entertainment lawyer, the playing field was level because there wasn't a lawyer at the next building who was an expert,
right?
Or there weren't any industry professionals who were experts because NIL had never been a thing before.
Right.
And so for me, it was like, all right, how do I develop expertise myself as an NIL attorney or as an expert in this space? And so that's where, there's an opportunity. One of my mentees, somebody who was a summer associate at my firm, who was a student at the University of Minnesota Law School. He had a background in sports, interested in it. And he approached me, was like, hey, what do you think about like developing a class around NIL at the U of M Law School? And I was like, I think that's a great idea. So he started having some meetings and he was like, well, how's this going to work? And so as we were developing the curriculum, I felt that it needed to be a partnership between my firm, Frederickson and Byron, and the U of M Law School in order to make it work. And the reason why I felt like we needed that partnership is because we needed to be able to provide pro bono legal services to the college athletes.
Yeah.
Right. So I think at the time, everybody's seeing on ESPN, oh, this kid just signed like a $500,000 deal or like all these astronomical NIL deals when that is like 0.00001% of all college athletes.
And for the people that are watching, NIL came. Where did NIL even come from? Like what made that shift happen?
Yeah. So NIL, for those who are unfamiliar, means name, image, and likeness. And what that means is, in college, the NCAA would not allow their players to be able to capitalize or monetize off of their name, image, or likeness, right? So they couldn't do endorsement deals, right? So like at the professional level, you think of Michael Jordan and Nike and Gatorade.
Right.
Those companies are using his name, Jordan, his image, and his likeness, like the logo, right, to sell products. And he gets to earn money from that use of the commercialization of his NIL. And the NCAA prohibited college players from being able to capitalize on that. And so in 2021, I think there's some misconceptions. Some people think it was like a lawsuit that was filed that kind of led the way for this. But it actually, from my perspective, it was a law that was passed in California. In 2019, there was the Pay for Play Act, the California Fair Pay for Play Act. And I think at the time California passed that rule, they said it's going to go into effect in 2021, right? So they had like a 2-year, I think, lead up to that. But there were other states that are like, yep, we're going to enact the same thing, the Fair Pay to Play Act. And I think it was Florida who's like, we're going to make it effective July 2021.
Yeah.
And so then I think the NCAA was like, oh, crap. Like, they're going to make this a law that allows the college athletes in their state to commercialize their NIL and make money.
Yeah.
So what the NCAA did at that time was like, all right, we need to issue an interim policy.
Yeah.
And that was the interim policy, July 2021, that allowed college players to now start to make money.
Because before they didn't make money on their jersey sales. Do they still make money on their jersey sales even now?
They can now, yeah.
They can now. So the college themselves, do they get a percentage now of because before the players didn't get none of that stuff, right?
Yeah. So there are what are referred to as collectives, which are groups that they're affiliated to the university, and they're looking for opportunities to help their college players earn money, right? So as an example, the collective at the U of M might put, a player on a T-shirt or a jersey and try to sell them, and then, they're going to get paid some sort of commission or structure depending on what that looks like,
right?
Through those sales. So now, I mean, they're getting paid from that. The NCAA, video game, they were able to opt in. They got a copy of the game, $600 if they would allow the use of their name on that. And so now there's so many different ways where college players are making money. They're doing appearances, autograph signings. They're holding camps for the youth.
Yeah.
In some instances, in a majority of instances, it's social media.
Yeah.
Right. So I remember when NIL first became a thing in 2011. Bojangles is a food chain, mostly in the South, and they'd reach out to players on their DMs and was like, "Hey, go to Bojangles, take a picture of you eating, post it. We'll send you $500." And it was really that simple.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there was like, from 2021 even to now, 2025, it's been, less than 4 full years. There's been so many twists and turns in NIL. And, people were like, oh, well, name, image, likeness. That means players should be getting paid for their name, image, or likeness. But that wasn't always the case. There were some instances where a company was like, I'm going to pay money to everybody on the roster for the football team or the men's basketball team. And as long as they're posting like 2 or 3 times a month about my company, I'm going to pay everybody.
Right.
Right. And I'm talking about people who don't even get on the field or get on the court.
Right.
So is it really their name, image, or likeness, or are you just paying them?
Right.
So there was a lot of,
because they were trying to make it fair, right? Is that why they were doing that?
The issue is that there were a lot of guidance around what you could and couldn't do. Right. There are some things that, the NCAA was sure about, which is like, you got to avoid these categories of business. You can't be in gaming, alcohol, tobacco, adult entertainment, guns, like certain categories, you can't endorse those things.
Right. Which is fair.
Yeah. So that was a big one.
You got to put a limit somewhere, right?
Right. And there were other like, guidance and limitations. Like you can't pay somebody based on their performance. It's not, if you get 4 touchdowns on Sunday, you'll get a extra $40,000.
Right,
Like you
right.
can't incentivize them that way. And they're like certain recruiting, guidelines and stuff like that. But again, it was the wild, wild west. People
Yeah.
trying to figure this out.
I feel like that's like anything when it's new like that.
For sure.
It is the wild, wild west.
Absolutely.
And some people gained, some people lost.
Yeah.
But you got to start it somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm torn between this whole NIL thing and multiple different reasons. I feel like a school's paying you to be there. A school's paying for your school.
Yeah.
Everything above. They should be able to recoup that.
Recoup that or recoup billions.
Well, that's just it. And that's the thing is there's a fine line. I get it. I mean, some of these kids are making more than fucking professional sports players.
Oh, for sure.
And it's like, holy balls, your
Yeah.
rookie contract, you're making triple.
Yeah.
Why would you not want to stay your full 4 or 5 years?
Oh, yeah.
Why
for
would you
sure.
want to go in the draft? You're
Right.
making more money doing this, and I get it. I mean, I understand it, and that's why I'm saying I'm so torn. But for me, it's like if you're getting paid to go to school and the school's paying you to be there, the school should be able to recoup what they at least spent.
Yeah.
Because some of these kids are very fortunate and get some very, very nice things
Yep.
to be doing what they're doing, which is
Yeah.
fine. They're talented. I get it. But at the same time, it's like, where do you draw the line? Because now it's gotten it's all about the money. And I
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot of schools out there that these kids went to that made the name for them schools. Now those schools are going to be set to the side because they can't afford them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't know if it's a matter of like being able to afford them. I mean, I get the philosophical discussion around that. Like, what is college meant to be?
Right.
Experience on campus and, but when you think about these college athletes and what is required of them,
Right.
they are already being expected to function as a professional. Let's talk about, the Pac-12 when that went away.
Yeah.
And now all the schools joined the Big Ten. So now there are athletes who are having to go from one coast to the other.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
Yep.
we can take the UConn women's program. Right, they're playing today in the championship game. They had to go to Seattle, Washington, I think for the Elite Eight. Now they're in Florida. Like you're traveling literally across from coast to coast, and you still have school obligations and practice and this schedule, and like the demands are significant.
Yeah.
That's no different than how professional athletes function, in their careers. So if schools have these expectations for these athletes to commit and to pretty much like pour their heart and soul into this, why should they not be compensated? Right?
That's a fair statement for sure.
and
I guess I never looked at it that way. I
Right.
guess that's pretty fair to say because they probably are way more active than a pro athlete, in my opinion. You might have a pro athlete that does a signing here, a signing there, a meet and greet here, whatever. But I guess when you start talking about they're actually doing their schoolwork, they're actually going to class, they're actually going to practice.
Yeah.
I guess if you look at it that way, that's a fair statement for sure.
And on top of that, March Madness alone generates billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right. And the schools are getting a part of that.
Yep.
Why shouldn't the athletes get a piece of the pie?
Right.
They're the ones that are
Making the money.
spent their entire lives playing the sport,
Yeah.
and
Right.
honing their craft.
Yep.
Right? Like since you were 4 years old and picked up a ball,
Yep.
you've been doing that for the next 20 years.
All right, you fucking won, damn it.
Like how could you not want to support somebody get paid that?
All right, you as an attorney, you won, damn it.
I've been a lawyer for 15 years. Like I want to be paid for that, right? Like I put a lot of energy into that.
That's funny shit.
Yeah.
I just battled against him and I lost in 30 seconds. That's awesome.
How did I get into NIL? Circling back to that is I started teaching at the U of M Law School. So I'm an adjunct professor there, and I teach a sports and NIL clinic, which means I have law students that I'm teaching how to, work as an attorney, right? So it's called experiential learning, where I'm not teaching out of a book. I'm teaching based on current events, what's going on in NIL right now. We're looking at actual contracts. And so that's how I developed the expertise. So we launched the program at the law school in the fall of 2022. So over the last 3 years, I've probably worked on close to 100 NIL deals, right? So I started seeing, all right, so this is an agreement between a collective and a college player. Here's an agreement between an agency and a college player. Here's an agreement between a company and a brand and a college player. So those are the three types of sources where contracts are coming from.
What do you see most of for contracts?
I didn't see a ton from collectives because I think a lot of those collectives function as like a quasi agent or agency. And so they would just, reach out to the college athletes and kind of like do their own thing.
Okay.
It wasn't often that college. And so we're representing the college players. Right?
Correct.
And so what agreements they bring to us is what we would review, negotiate on their behalf. And so the majority of them are from agencies or from brands and companies directly.
Right. Okay.
Those are the two that I saw the most of over the last few years. And so what did reviewing those, nearly 100 opportunities look like? Well, I'm becoming familiar with what's in the contracts. I'm becoming familiar with what is being proposed as compensation.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm learning the marketplace and what, that looks like at the same time my law students are, and at the same time I'm advising the college players. And so, the whole purpose in launching the sports and NIL clinic was twofold. It was to provide, as I mentioned, the experiential learning opportunities for the law students, as well as providing support for the college athletes. And the reason why I felt like that was a need is, one of the reasons why I got into sports entertainment altogether was after watching ESPN's documentary 30 for 30 on going broke.
Yeah.
Right. So I was watching this documentary and I'm seeing professional athletes who had amassed hundreds of millions of dollars in their career filing for bankruptcy within 3 years of retiring.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll stop you right there. Do you feel like that's changed with the newer generation than the older generation? Do you think that the older generation, I mean, they let's just be honest, they just blew the money, right?
A lot of them did.
On all kinds of shit. But
sure.
They also weren't making the money that these kids are making today.
Yeah.
Do you think that with the knowledge that these guys have today is going to change that bankruptcy status quo? Because you hear that a lot in every sport. Football is probably one of the number one ones that they go bankrupt. Do you think the younger generation is going to change that?
I think it could. But it depends, like I still read about things right now. Like I think a few weeks ago, I read about a football player who's either like in his first or second year and he's got like a Rolls Royce and a Bugatti. And it's like, how does his salary
match up
with him having two of these vehicles? Right. So it's, like you said, probably blowing money.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that, yes, some of the players have learned, because I remember like, the rookie hazing where they're like, you're taking the whole team out and you're paying for everybody's dinner, right? You're blowing a bag, easy.
Yeah.
Now the players are like, fuck that. I'm not doing that. That's just stupid. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
So you hear about, the evolution in that sense.
Right.
But, there's still some people who, if you don't come from money, wealth, and financial acumen and business acumen, and if you don't have the right people in your corner, you can continue to fall into those, pitfalls.
Easy to do.
Absolutely.
Super easy.
Because you don't know, like, it's as easy as simple economics. Oh, I got $1 million signing bonus. You're thinking I got $1 million in the bank. You're not thinking I got to pay the IRS. I got to pay my agent. I got to pay this fee and that fee.
And that's I think a lot of people too is people don't realize just because you get a $5 million deal, you're not getting $5 million, guys.
100% you're not.
There's 20 other people that are getting a piece of that pie. Right. Don't quote me on the number of 20 people, but there is a lot of other people in that pie that are going to get paid off because they've either invested in you, they've done a lot of things that are behind the scenes. So not everybody knows that just because somebody signs a $5 million deal, they're honestly lucky if they get $3 million.
And that's the biggest misconception is like, and who is going to educate these individuals on that, right? And so for me, I felt like I want to be somebody who can help.
Yeah.
Right. Like that was the underlying point is if I can assist a professional athlete or now college athlete in protecting their interests from a legal perspective.
Right.
I can't tell you what to do with your money because I'm not a financial guy.
Right. Yeah.
But you for sure should have a financial person on the team.
Yeah.
You should have a CPA. You should have a business manager, depending on where you're at in your career, that helps you manage things. Right. And so I just wanted to be a part of that trusted circle of advisors from the legal perspective that would help. And so that was why I got into sports entertainment, working with professional athletes. And so then obviously in 2021, when NIL rolled out, I was like, man, if there are people preying on professional athletes, there are for sure people preying on college athletes.
100%.
You know,
Because they're young. And they're going to try taking advantage of that 100%.
Oh, and I've seen that. And I mean, we've seen those horror stories in the media. You know, like there was somebody who played at some school in Florida, got drafted in the second round, playing for an NFL team. And the deal that he signed when he was in college was, in exchange for us giving you $400,000 tomorrow, you are going to give us 15% of your pre-taxed NFL salary in perpetuity, meaning forever.
Wow.
Oh,
right?
That's
holy
insane,
shit.
dude.
But now this person, if you are, depending on your circumstances, $400,000 is life changing for you and your family.
Facts.
Right.
Right? And if they say you got to sign this tomorrow, you think he made a pit stop to go find an attorney that could
Hell
review
no,
this?
he went to White Castle and signed that son of a
He
bitch.
signed that mug and he got
Yeah.
a wire the next day, and
Right.
you know, and so now obviously he's fighting that.
Yeah.
Right? It makes sense. Like that is such a predatory agreement, and
And they
you know,
knew that.
I'm sure they did.
I mean, that was fact. They know that. I mean, that's
Right. Like,
they're gonna
you
get,
know,
they should get 8-0 in court.
15% of like pre-tax money, like that's your gross income, and you're trying to take.
They
That's
really
insane.
give me 20%.
Your agent don't even make that
No.
much, right? Like
No.
obviously, that's it's ludicrous,
Right, that's
right.
crazy.
And so you know when you hear stories about that, you're like, all right, I want to have a significant impact in supporting these college players. And so, you know, when we started this clinic, it's like, well, how are we going to get the students to come see us?
Right.
Networking, right? So develop relationships with the AD's office and the representatives there. If you guys have any athletes that come see you and they have questions about NIL, send them to us at the clinic. I even took my law students over to Athletes Village on the U of M campus, where their cafeteria where they eat and do all their stuff. We're sitting there tabling like, hey, waving our hands. If you have questions about NIL, come see us, right? And so we are.
What kind of looks were you getting?
Some folks are like, this is kind of weird. Like we're just trying to have a meal, and you got law students out here approaching us as we're coming in and out of the building.
Yeah.
And, you know, but it paid off because I think, you know, once people realize like, okay, NIL is a real thing and it's here to stay.
Right.
It's good to have the resource.
Yeah.
And, you know, what I found kind of frustrating is we are providing this service for free, pro bono. And I'm like, why wouldn't you go talk to somebody if you don't got to pay nothing for it?
Right.
But then I have to put myself in the shoes of, you know, 18, 19, 20-year-old. If somebody encouraged me and told me I had to go talk to a lawyer, I'm not going.
Right.
And kinda
Where's
like,
mom and dad?
No, I don't want to go talk to a lawyer. And you mentioned mom and dad, which is interesting. I feel like a lot of the college players that I've worked with, their parents were the one, you better not sign shit until you go talk to a lawyer.
Right.
100%.
Right. And so, you know, I've had parents reach out to me.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, my kid, they have this opportunity, but I told them we need to talk to a lawyer first. Your name came up here, or wherever. And so, you know, that's where the networking works out.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've inserted myself in spaces where I've met parents of, you know, elite athletes. You know, I'm always at Twin Cities Pro-Am over the summers.
Yeah.
You know, finding out who's elite. I track basketball. You know, I just recently started working with a kid who's in high school. He's a junior this year. And already getting NIL looks and people who want to work with him to endorse certain products and things like that. And so, I mean, folks are getting younger and younger.
I'm just starting to dabble in that. So I just sponsored TLC Elite Team out of Minnesota.
Pieces,
so I'm part of that. Yeah. So I'm part of that. And I'm learning that stuff because these kids, I mean, they're fucking phenomenal. I mean, it's and like you said, these there's people sitting in the stands and you don't know where they are. They could be recruiting these guys and so forth. And I'm starting to learn that type of stuff and it's at a young age. I mean, this is 14U.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, because in high school, in July 2022, so a year after the NCAA changed the NIL rules, Minnesota State High School League allowed their students to also monetize on NIL. And I think Minnesota is one of maybe like 20 or 30 states that have allowed high school students to participate in NIL. There are some states that don't allow that, which is crazy because we have seen kids literally in high school moving from one state to another.
Just for that.
Just for the NIL opportunity.
Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's a crazy.
So when this took
industry.
off, and obviously we're bringing it back to 21, when this took off, what came to your mindset of, here we fucking go. This was all meant for me and I'm taking it and I'm running this sumbitch. I mean, that's what you're doing. I mean, really, I mean, if you look at your bio, you're definitely leading, in my opinion, by just doing the research on you. You're running this in the state of Minnesota for sure. I mean, your name comes up everywhere.
Yeah, and I think at that time, what came to my mind was a reminder of why I got into sports entertainment. I was like, oh shit, who's gonna screw over these college kids next?
Right.
And I more so had a concern than I had a feeling of excitement.
Yeah.
I was concerned first just because I knew there'd be people who take advantage of this opportunity because it's a brand new area, everything is gray.
Yeah.
But my excitement was that, oh, finally, like I think these college athletes deserve to be paid. And now is their opportunity. It's just, it's kind of like a roller coaster. It's like, oh man, like I don't want to hear any horror stories.
Right.
But at the same time, I was like, oh, well, here's my opportunity. Because, as they say, where there's a problem, there's an opportunity.
Correct.
Right. And so I'm trying to help solve some of those problems by supporting these student athletes. And so, I mentioned, the nearly hundreds that I've worked with. That was just for me to like develop the expertise. Right. And so, and I've been doing that again. We're 4 years in, and now I'm starting to work with companies, right? So there are companies who are like, hey, we want to embark on, an NIL marketing campaign to promote our products and services. We hear you're the NIL expert in the town. Can you help us?
Yeah.
And so now I'm able to work with, companies who want to do that, help them do it the right way. And the folks that I've had the honor and privilege to work with, I am so glad that their values and morals are aligned with mine.
Right.
Where, I met the president of a financial institution in our first call. He's like, look, I'm not looking to screw over any kids.
Yeah.
High school or college, it doesn't matter.
All right.
He was like, I want to help them.
Right.
And so we're talking about like, this is what they're often getting paid in the market. He's like, we're going to pay more than that. Like, I want to help these kids, Right. And I was like, it was so refreshing to have a conversation with this president who wanted to support, these athletes. And I was like, these are the type of folks I want to work with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that was an awesome opportunity. And, I've started to get more opportunities in that space, helping, organizers, create a collective to support, college students or, reviewing agreements, all kinds of different opportunities. And so, I've been extremely fortunate. And again, I think my motto from everything that I've done in my career has been go help people and everything else falls into place.
Yeah. So it's 2025.
Yep.
NIL's changing possibly again.
Yeah.
I mean, like we said, it's constantly going to change. And I feel like that's probably going to happen for the next probably 15 years. I mean, it's always going to probably change, but they're still, in my opinion, getting their feet wet. Like you said, it's only been 4 years.
Trying to figure it out. Yeah.
I mean, everything that's new is always going to change. Rules are going to change. That's something you have to keep up on because your clients are going to be probably calling you the second something changes.
Yep.
Hey, did you hear this? Bro, I was there.
Yeah.
I know exactly what's going on.
Yep.
Got you guys dialed in. What with this hearing stuff that's coming up and so forth, what is something that you're going to look back and be like, they're really starting to help the kids. They're really starting to look for the kids. They're looking out for the kids because when this all started, I feel like their intentions were to help the kids, but it necessarily didn't. I feel like people benefited that should have never benefited. And I think that with all of this stuff coming up soon, that might change a lot of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think, so the big case that's going on right now is House versus the NCAA. It's an antitrust lawsuit. And essentially, the argument is that the NCAA is restricting how much college players can make.
Right.
And so that's kind of like the underlying issue there. And, with this settlement, as with the settlement in any case, you're not going to get everything you want.
Right.
And you're just trying to find a resolution that the two sides can be happy with.
Yep.
And one of the big things in connection with this settlement is that academic institutions are going to be able to pay their athletes directly. So earlier I mentioned NIL deals are coming from 3 sources, from collectives, agencies, and companies and brands directly working with athletes.
Yeah.
Schools have been prohibited from paying the student directly. And so now under this settlement, assuming if it gets approved this upcoming week, starting July 2025, so the next academic school year, the upcoming one, schools can pay athletes. And there's like a salary cap, if you will. So it's supposed to be like 22% of the school's revenues from certain categories, right? Like ticket sales, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that equates to about like roughly $21 million. That's kind of like the salary cap number that's been tossed around. And so I mentioned like these athletes are functioning like professionals. Now we're hearing things that sound even more like they're in the professional space, salary cap, things like that. And so getting paid directly, right? And so now, even before this approval of this settlement, schools have already been signing these agreements. Some refer to them as revenue sharing agreements with the players because, again, their sources from the school and they're sharing certain revenues, but they're contingent upon this hearing and this settlement being approved, right? And so schools will be like, hey, we want you to come to our school. Here's, a contract for X amount of dollars, but it's contingent upon this happening.
Right.
And so schools are already doing this. But like now, I mean, $21 million, that's supposed to be allocated amongst like all your sports and all that stuff.
If you think about it, that's not a lot of money.
It depends, right? Because think about it. Let's just say, men's basketball and men's football are going to take the huge chunk of the pie.
Yeah.
Right. But then you think about like schools in the Big East, right? Like a St. John's who just had an incredible run.
Right.
They don't have a football team.
Fair.
So if you don't got to dish out millions and millions of dollars to the football team, does that mean that can be allocated to the men's basketball program?
Right.
So if most schools get $5-6 million, in salary cap to go recruit players, but in the Big East you get 10-12 million, like, is that an unfair advantage?
Right. So do you think schools are going to start dropping sports because of that?
No, I don't think they'll. I don't think they'll they'll start dropping sports because I already know that the majority of schools, they're non-big sports. So like outside of men's basketball and football, most of the sports operate at a loss.
Correct.
So those two sports generate so much revenue that they are supporting lacrosse and golf and tennis and cheer and all those other wrestling, all those other things. So the school already operates at a deficit for those sports.
Okay.
And so long as I think the school generates enough revenue from, obviously these main sports and these other things, they'll be able to keep them around. But that's always going to be a concern depending on the school. And, that's a big part of it is like, how do the small schools compete, right? Like I think that was a big conversation right now. The men's, March Madness, Sweet 16, Elite 8, they're all the big schools, all the schools that generate hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
Right.
And so now I was like, how is this fair? And so, I mean, there's always going to be those conversations around that. But, to your point, like it evolves constantly.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's a hearing, coming up this week. We don't know if the judge is going to rule from the bench or take it under advisement. And then, we don't know what challenges will come. I think a lot of people think it's going to get approved. I mean, it's
depends on what side of the bed she wakes up on.
Yeah, exactly. Like you just don't know,
or if she ate her breakfast or not.
Yeah, and so like your point, it's always evolving, and like the way that I keep up with it, or try my best to, anyways, is I teach my class at the U of M Law School every Wednesday afternoon, and as a part of our curriculum, we have what I refer to as like current events. Each student bringing an article on NIL from this week, and every week there's something I haven't seen. And every week they're able to bring something that's not the same as the next student. So that tells you like how much activity is going out there. They're like, oh, professor, have you seen like this lawsuit? I was like, no, this is crazy. And so there's always something. And so I try to keep up, obviously through having discussions with my students in class.
Because they're teaching you things.
We're learning at the same time.
I mean, y'all are learning together.
Right. Like, I mean, when I tell you in July or, in 2022, when we launched this class, I was like, all right, we got women's Gophers hockey player presented with an NIL opportunity. Like, we digging in together.
Right.
Like, we're learning together.
That's cool.
Because,
that's a cool experiment, really.
100%.
Yeah,
and
cool.
I learn from these students, man. And it's such an honor and privilege to like be able to have these conversations because these are the future lawyers of tomorrow.
Right.
And Facts. I get to share with them the important things. And, one of my favorite aspects of the class, in addition to the current events, is like I take them on field trips. I know we in college or law school, but we going on field trips, and so like.
It ain't the fucking zoo either.
Man, no. So like this year, we took two field trips within the last few months. We went to an NFL agency downtown Minneapolis.
Oh, cool.
The founder is one of my buddies. And I was like, I haven't taken my class on a field trip to your agency in a couple of years. So we went down there, we sat in a room, like chopped it up with like all of his staff and all the things they're doing. And it was interesting because when I had taken my very first class to that agency, that's when NIL was brand new. They're like, man, we don't know how we're going to approach NIL. We don't know if we want to sit on our hands or jump with 2 feet,
right?
Sit on the sidelines. But now, fast forward 2 years later, it's like, oh, we have to do this. Like,
right.
We are in NIL. Like we're talking high school kids in Texas and Alabama. Like they're like 100%, full forge ahead. There's like, because we're at a disadvantage if we're not doing that because everybody's doing NIL.
Yeah.
Right. So just seeing that shift, even in a strategic approach and perspective, and then just having those conversations with the students. We had done an NIL deal for one of the Gophers women's basketball players, and then got to go see her play in a game, and it was just cool to see, kind of like to be able to see that, in real time, but also, again, the point was to network.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're going to these agencies and we're meeting these people working in this space. If you're interested in working in sports, like y'all need to exchange information, hit them up on LinkedIn. And, I always emphasize the importance of networking because, the founder of the agency, I met him through the nightclub. He was one of my partners, co-investors. Right. Yeah. So it was like, I mentioned rubbing elbows with people I wouldn't have access to. And we met through the nightclub, and fast forward now, I'm able to take my students on field trips to his agency. It's dope.
Yeah, there's been a lot of gems in here, bro.
Yeah,
there's been a lot of gems, and it's what really stands out to me, to be honest with you, is putting yourself out there.
Yeah,
because bring this back to when we started this podcast, when we started talking, was you were uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And you put on a networking thing in downtown, and it started your first time with 2 people.
It started with 2 people being spotlighted.
Correct.
Yes. Yep.
And then you started going out and expanding, and you're bringing in 400 or 500 people, bro.
Yeah.
And to break down a wall that you had, and the way you did it, I mean, that's fucking crazy, bro.
Appreciate that.
I mean, it's legendary because not very many people would do that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do that and you take charge, and I really want you guys to understand that this is a lesson to learn, is what he did is very hard to do, but look where it got him. Mm-hmm. Look where it got you, man. I mean, you're running so many things. Like I started this out was you're a man of so many hats.
Yep.
And breaking that wall down of being uncomfortable, and now you're rubbing elbows with fucking billionaires. I mean, let's be real. You know what I mean? And that's so cool. And that's part of why I wanted to bring you on here, was because it shows it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what field you're in. We all face those walls.
Mm-hmm.
You got to face it, and you got to take it down.
Yeah.
It might not be the way that he did it. It might be a different type of way.
Sure.
There's a million ways to do something, but for you to come on and explain how you would do that is fucking cool as hell, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I learned so much today, and the biggest thing that I could take from is networking and being that person to stand up and walk towards somebody that you're interested in and introducing yourself first, because that doesn't happen all the time. It takes a special individual, in my opinion, to do that.
Yep. And so that was kind of like the foundation of it, right?
Is
approaching people and meeting people, but what I've ultimately learned, with networking is it's not about just collecting contacts. It's not about going to a room, approaching people and getting contacts. Networking, I feel like, is about becoming the person that everyone wants to meet.
Right.
Right. And so now, given all the activity that I had in the spaces and the circles that I've been in, now people are like, oh, I want to meet Chris. I want to hear about what Chris is doing.
Right.
And so I think when you approach it, organically and genuinely, and you do it, I mean, I said I launched this January 2017, it's been over 8 years now.
Yeah.
Right. And I still continue to network. Like, I'm not doing the weekly happy hours, but I'm throwing events, curating events, multiple events a weekend.
Yeah.
And then on any given night at those events, might have a CEO of a company hit me up. Hey, I want to drop in and, check you out. Other professionals, executives from the Timberwolves have been to my events, just through networking. And I have people hit me up like, hey, got a buddy in town. They want to, kind of go hang out. Can you help them navigate this scene or that scene or whatever the case may be? And that's what I mean by becoming the person that other folks want to meet.
Right.
Is because now, I've developed a reputation of, one, having good events, having fun events, safe events, and people, are approaching me I'm like extremely flattered by that.
Yeah.
But I know that I've put in the work to develop that and
Right.
protect that reputation. So
when you lay your head down at night, you just smile going, we did it.
You know,
the work's never done. Don't get me wrong.
No,
don't get me wrong.
It's never done. And I think that's, you know, it's funny because just yesterday, my significant other and I were headed to my mom's house to have lunch, you know, and I'm just driving and she was like, you never shut your brain off, do you?
Can't.
And I was like, no. She was like, what are you thinking about right now? And I was like, well, I got one kid who's looking at like, you know, a high 6-figure contract from a school. And I really want to do the best job I can to help him. And that's going to come up really quick on Monday. And then I got this other client over here dealing with this issue. And so it's like, there are so many moving parts of my life. And whether that's just siloed in the legal practice, right. And then it's, oh, we had, you know, a launch event last night at this, you know, partnership with this new venue. Like, how do we expand that, grow that, develop that? And it's like, and I got kids who I love and adore, and how do I support them? And they got track, and I'm coaching track now. And then like I got like 3 more classes with my law students. So it's literally like I can bounce like all over the place in my thoughts, and they're all tied to me. And so like to your point, the work is never done.
Right.
But I will say, despite all that, when I lay my head at night, it takes me 2 seconds to crash. When I lay on that pillow, like,
so fucking tired, dude.
Bro. I mean, I
shit, what kind of pillow do you have?
I fall asleep instantly. Like,
right.
You know what? Tomorrow's a new day.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to sleep. And like one thing that I've learned, like, because people often ask, like, how do you balance and manage all of that? And you know, I think from my perspective, my secret sauce is taking naps.
Yeah.
Like I've mastered power naps, where it's like if I just need to crash for 20 minutes, just shut my eyes. Crash for 20 minutes, and then I'm like back and active again.
You got 20 missed phone calls.
Man, bro, literally it's like just that does wonders for me.
Right.
You know? And so yeah, there's never enough time in a day.
Yeah.
I've had to learn the hard way to monetize my time.
Right.
You know, it's like, as I mentioned, I'm a firm believer in reaching back while I climb. I want to help as many people as I can, but I can't help everybody. And I just got to figure out like how to do that efficiently. You know, but like it's with everything in life, it's a process.
Yep.
You know, like trials and tribulations, you know, you learn from your mistakes and you keep it moving.
Right.
You know?
That's facts though. Yeah. That's straight entrepreneurship in my opinion. You know what I mean? To be a leader in it. I mean, and that's how I look at you, as you're a leader. I mean, it's not, there's nothing that you do that you're following.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. You got to lead from the front.
Right. And then people are going to follow you, and that's what makes you move forward even more, in my opinion. You know what I mean? So if there's a couple tips that you know the kids and so forth are watching this that want to get into the sports attorney and so forth, what are a couple things that you would say? Don't do this.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yep. For sure, what you should not do is burn bridges. Right?
Facts. Yeah.
I mean, you cannot burn bridges, and you know you have to protect your reputation.
Facts.
You know, I am extremely fortunate and blessed that like I've been able to navigate that and protect my reputation, because you know you don't know where opportunities come from. Like one of the things that I learned, and this was when I was in law school. After the first summer I had at this law firm, the second summer the recruiter sent me like an email PDF with like a bunch of resumes, and I'm like, I don't think you meant to send this to me because you know I'm just a law student.
Right. And
she was like, no, these are the resumes from people from your law school, from your class. And I was like, oh, so like, what do you want me to do with them? She was like, well, look at them. Is there anybody in there that you wouldn't want to work with? And I was like, well, what do you mean? She was like, you already have a job here. Like you sign a contract, you're going to start when you graduate. And we work in teams. We protect the culture. We want to make sure we have good people here. If there are any jerks or assholes in that list of resumes, let me know. And I was like, oh. And I mean,
yeah, this guy, this girl, that girl, this guy.
Right. So, and I didn't know like how much weight she was going to put into my opinion or perspective. Yeah. But I do recall there was one guy I was like, you know, I didn't have a good personal experience with him in law school.
Right.
It's already competitive, and he was just rude and he was a jerk.
Yeah.
And I was like, this guy was like super cool. Like I really vibed well with him. And when I tell you the following summer when I came back, the guy that I liked was in the class with me. The jerk wasn't. And I'm not saying that's because of my opinion, but my point is...
That's definitely your fucking opinion.
I'm saying, like, you just got to be a good person.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
Life is already hard. Like, if somebody missed law school, you know, a class, and they're like, Chris, like, can you share your notes with me? Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be, overprotective of my note. Like, I don't know what your issues were, why you missed class, but it's all good. If I can help you, I'm going to help you, even though this is a competitive environment.
Right.
You know what I mean? So for sure, kids, like, don't burn bridges, protect your reputation. Like, that is just so important because, especially while you're networking, sometimes your reputation precedes you.
Facts.
Right? Before you meet somebody, they might already have a sense of who you are, and if it's a positive thing, it's gonna help you.
Right, and that always happens. There's always those people that already have a opinion because they heard it from somebody else, right?
For sure.
I mean,
there's so many people I've met where they're like, oh, like I know who you are.
Yeah.
Like I'm familiar with you. Heard all good things.
Yeah. And that's like I've heard the same shit as like, well, I know that guy. He's an asshole. And I'm like, I don't know. I know of him.
Yeah.
Never dealt with him. Never worked with him. I don't know who the hell he is. And I always try to save that judgment for myself.
Right.
Because they might have had something going on. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not going to.
For sure.
Just because you got something going on doesn't mean that I'm going to bum on him because of it,
But if you hear the good things about them, you're even more inclined to want to meet them.
Right. Yep.
So
don't burn bridges. What else can
protect your reputation?
Protect your reputation.
Yeah, and networking, right? So I mean, like my entire professional and personal brand has been around elevating, right? So on my hoodie, elevate.
Yeah.
Like that is my daily mantra, and elevate doesn't have to apply to just the professional setting, right? It can be personally in your relationships, financially, whatever the case may be. It's always about, the upward trajectory, right? And moving up. Because I think about, just my upbringing and, the things that I've had to overcome in life and where I grew up statistically against all odds.
Facts.
I've had teachers who told me I wasn't going to amount to shit. Like, I mean, literally like just, when you think about that and having to really, pull up your bootstraps and really take yourself to the next level. That's why that's, my personal brand, but also what I've become known as, both as a lawyer in the professional setting, whether it's a nightclub or whatever the case may be, is like you're always looking to be a better version of yourself from the day before. Right. So, I mean, moving up. That's what it is.
We're not moving down.
Not at all.
You can't. You might take a step back, but you're going to take 3 forward.
Oh, for sure. And stuff happens.
Yeah.
But it's all about your mindset. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there are definitely times where I've had to overcome, adversity. It's like, oh, man, like, this is messed up.
Yeah.
But while you can be down for a little bit, you don't want to live there. You don't want to bask in the negativity.
Absolutely. Can't.
And, like, I'm always forward thinking, like, the exchange closed August 2024.
Yeah.
And we were open 9 years. That's 9 years of my life.
Tons of people were shocked.
I don't know nothing about that.
But a lot of people were like, what?
Oh, you said shocked?
Yeah, they were shocked.
Yeah. Oh, no, a lot of people were. Like, I mean, we were, a hot, booming nightclub. And, even to sustain, that longevity, and so people were like.
In that nightlife.
Right.
That's a long time.
It's a tough industry. And so people were like, oh, like, were you super sad? I was like, yeah, there are definitely moments where I was sad. And they're like, well, what are you going to do now? Like, you were doing this Friday night thing for like forever and it was so successful. And obviously you did well financially. And I was like, looking for the next opportunity, right? Like I can be sad. It happens, but you got to keep the wheels moving.
Yep.
And that's what elevate is, right? Like you're never complacent. You're just always moving. And eventually, and hopefully, God willing, that trajectory and the wheels are moving in an upward direction.
Yeah. Everything's a stepping stone, but you got to make sure that stepping stone is positive.
For sure.
Don't turn it into a negative and don't be a negative stepping stone.
Right.
Because there's some people that use you just to get up to that level.
Yep.
Don't do that shit.
Yep.
I don't go for that. You know what I mean? You're going to elevate. You're a stepping stone with me. Cool.
Yep.
But leave it as a positive stepping stone. You know
Absolutely.
What I'm saying?
Yeah. You don't have to step on the next person
Correct.
to get there.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, you said it, like elevating together, right?
Yeah.
Collaborating.
Yeah.
That's one of the other things that I've learned is, I started doing these events by myself. I don't do any events by myself anymore.
Right.
I don't need to. Like, I want to be able to elevate with my guys and with my team and with people who are like-minded individuals, who are not afraid of hard work, who are willing to grind just like me, right?
Yeah.
If we're all working together, look, man, like you get, I think there's a African proverb that talks about like, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together, right?
Yeah.
So I'm always thinking about ways to collaborate and connect with folks and do things together. And I've seen the results.
Yeah.
I'm a walking testament of the results of that.
After today, you're definitely going to be one.
Like, I haven't done anything on my own.
Right.
At all. Any successful person, they've had somebody support them, help them, assist them along the way.
Right. Yep.
So.
That's facts. Man, I truly appreciate you swinging by
Absolutely.
the pad, man, and stopping through and throwing a shit ton of gems on here. My mind's just blowing right now, dude. I'm serious, man. It was a really, really good talk with you, dude.
Appreciate that. Appreciate
and I truly appreciate you taking the time to swing by, stopping by, feed my pockets.
Yeah, thank you, man.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It means a lot to me.
It's my pleasure. It's my
more than
pleasure.
you know, bro.
Yep.
Seriously, it does. But make sure you guys follow him on Instagram. Make sure you guys hit the like, subscribe, and also follow me on YouTube. Chris, it's been a pleasure, bro, boy.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're out.
Yep.